I'm Roger Briggs, and I'm co-founder of the Planet Project, one of many organizations working on the great evolutionary transition to a planetary culture of caring, partnership, and peace. I'm so excited to be here today with Jude Currivan and Riane Eisler, two of our most esteemed and inspiring luminaries in the evolutionary space. Jude Currivan became a leading businesswoman in the UK and went on to get advanced degrees in quantum physics and cosmology and then archaeology. That's quite a combination. She's a planetary healer, a scientist, a mystic, a futurist, an author, a speaker, co-founder of Whole World View, and is now also a filmmaker after her recent short film, A Radical Guide to Reality. Riane Eisler is a social systems scientist, a futurist, a cultural historian, attorney, speaker, and author of 13 books and many articles. In her best-selling book from 1987, The Chalice and the Blade, she introduced the domination partnership spectrum for social systems, which is more relevant than ever today. She continues to work relentlessly to advance partnership culture and caring economics. So we're in for a real treat today as we explore their work and their visions of what the world could be. We'll begin with Jude, then move to Riane, and then have a follow-up conversation. So over to you, Jude.
Thank you, Roger. And hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you all. And I've had the pleasure and the privilege of being with Ben and the Unity Earth and World Unity Week and Unity Symposiums from the beginning. So it's wonderful to be with so many of you today and hear your inspirational embodying of what our emerging planetary consciousness can be. And for us to scale and deepen our collaborative efforts to spiral up in this new energy for planetary consciousness, I propose that we can best and perhaps only do so by standing together on the ground that unity is not an aspiration, but our existential reality and our emergent evolutionary potential. Well, this then, I suggest, enables us to do individually and communally stand for and align unitive values and purpose to serve love in action. We come together today and to do so at a time and with the energies of a harmonic emergence and year of the fire horse, inspiring and empowering us, underpinned and framed by a coming revolution of our collective worldview. Instead of the outworn paradigm of separation and a solely material and mechanistic universe, evidence at all scales, and especially at the level of our everyday lived lives, is turning this on its head. And instead, it's revealing an essentially living and loving universe whose appearance emerges from deeper levels of causation. It's showing that our universe not only exists and evolves as an entirely unified and innately sentient conscious entity, but meaningfully and purposefully exists to evolve from simplicity to complexity and diversity, and toward ever greater levels of individuated and collective self-expression, self-awareness, and conscious interdependence. And as Julie mentioned earlier, where fundamentally mind and consciousness aren't what we have, but what we and the whole world truly are. This momentous convergence of science with universal wisdom, indigenous and spiritually based teachings and traditions heralds not only a revolution in science, but invites a healing of what I call a collective dis-ease of separation and a revolution in human consciousness. And its unitive worldview also enables us to share a new and unitive narrative that recognizes our interbeing, our interconnectedness, our interdependence, and belonging with the whole community of our planetary home Gaia and with our entire universe. Instead of the apparent separation of our inner and outer awareness, it values our inner knowing and invites us to inwardly hear the wisdom of our hearts. It also honors and respects the complementarity of feminine and masculine yin-yang attributes and balance relatedness, and welcomes their co-creativity within and between us. And so its unity expressed in radical diversity guides us to a remembered wholeness of both the inner being and outer doing in our lives, and supports us in integrating our innate health and wholeness, both individually and collectively. This unitive perspective is empowering communities of catalysts dedicated to serve deep and rapid transformation for emergent economic, social, and learning that reflect our existential unity and respect and celebrate our meaningful and purposeful diversity to foster a universal culture of peace based on ethics, common good, happiness, and love as evolutionary drivers. Through the evidence-based unity of science at all scales of existence and many fields of research of this emergent understanding, a developing science of unitive love, soul, understands love as a universal principle. Its living inquiry asks, what if undivided love, as Julie referred to it, is a foundational design, an evolutionary guide through which coherence, and we've heard a beautiful exploration of coherence today, healing and regenerative futures emerge at every scale of being. And what if, instead of being role models, it encourages us to become soul models and servant leaders in service to the good of the whole and in service to peace on earth and peace throughout the whole world? Soul in practice can inspire and empower the theme of Spiring Up. Its unitive and evidence-based science reveals that evolution builds on the past without erasure, that growth and emergence from simplicity to complexity continue a journey without disconnection, and that progress is rooted, now understanding that it is not in human memory, and retaining the values of our traditions that continue to support our journey, however important those are, of place and relationship, but expand our belonging to a living and loving universe as family members of its vast communities of life. And in doing so, it re-imbues the vibrations of love, of the universal principles, as Ben mentioned, of beauty, truth, and goodness, as embodying a spiraling new energy, a Mobius energy, a Mobius dance of energy, of planetary consciousness, as Yuka-san mentioned. So let us invite and empower partnerships and co-creative coalitions, murmurations of human kindness, wisdom pools, and moving forward together, building trust, consensus, and coherence, and in sharing the unity, diversity, and belonging of our common humanity and with our beloved planetary home, Gaia, and all her children. And now back to Roger and to Riane, whose 4 cornerstones of partnership have been key to my own learning and emergent service to the world in enabling such emergent potential to flourish.
What a beautiful vision, Jude. Thank you so much. Riane.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you here to talk about a new planetary consciousness. And thank you, Jude, for your lovely and very meaningful talk. Einstein said that we cannot solve problems with the same consciousness that created them. we urgently need a new consciousness, a new way of looking at our world. And this includes, as I found out in my multidisciplinary cross-cultural research, new social categories that are essential to effectively address our mounting ecological, technological challenges. Now, actually, and this is so important, the consciousness that we're all interconnected is really not new. As those of you familiar with my book, with The Chalice and the Blade, Our History, Our Future know, and as those of you keeping up with new information that's emerging about earlier cultures like Çatalhöyük know, for millennia in our prehistory, human culture oriented more to the partnership side rather than the domination side of the partnership domination social scale. They were sustainable, equitable, less violent, and yes, their art shows that their belief system supported the knowledge that is emerging today from no less than physics, that we're all interconnected with one another and with nature. Now, this is different from what we're often told about domination or top-down rule being inevitable. You know, that story is being frontally challenged worldwide by many people, including those that are here today. And in fact, if you think about modern history, this challenge started in the 1700s with the movement challenging the, quote, divinely ordained right of kings to rule, followed by the challenge to the, again, divinely ordained right of men to rule over women and children by the feminist and women's movements, and then the challenge to the, again, divinely ordained right of a, quote, superior race to rule over a, quote, inferior ones, through the abolitionist civil rights, anti-colonialism, Black Lives Matter movements, all the way to the environmental movement that is today challenging the conquest, the domination of nature, our Mother Earth. Now, the categories of domination-oriented systems and partnership-oriented systems show the interconnection of all these movements. Think about it. They all, including the movements for peace, for a more equitable economic and social system, they all challenge the same thing, domination. So we have to focus not only on ameliorating the suffering, the trauma constantly caused by domination systems, because that maintains the domination system, doesn't it? As Jude said, we are interconnected, and here are 4 strategic cornerstones we must, those who have this consciousness already, we must shift from domination to partnership, family and childhood, gender, economics, and story language. The first cornerstone of childhood, family, has consistently been a focus of domination and would-be domination regimes. For example, the so-called U.S. Rightist Fundamentalist Alliance has long considered the socialization of children key to their agenda. Indeed, science shows that what children observe and experience impacts nothing less than how our brains develop, and hence how we think, feel, and act, including how we vote. So we must globally shift to caring for children, not through fear, and violence, but by modeling and acting with respect, leaving behind domination traditions of spanking and other violence in family, as our recent virtual summit, Peace Begins at Home, still online, you can watch it, shows. Now, the second cornerstone is gender. How a society organizes the roles and relations of the two basic forms of humanity, male and female, is a major focus of those pushing us back to domination. We too have to understand that this is not just a women's issue, but a family, social, environmental, and economic key organizing principle. Ranking male, masculine, quote unquote, over female, feminine, and rigid gender stereotypes. This teaches children, starting in their families, because these cornerstones are all interconnected, to equate difference with superiority and inferiority, with dominating or being dominated. This is a template then, and this is basic for the in-group versus out-group thinking and acting of domination-oriented cultures or subcultures, rankings based on a different race, religion, sexual orientation, and so forth. Now, the third cornerstone, and we're going through these very quickly, but it's all in my books and articles. The third cornerstone is economics. The current argument, my friends, between capitalism and socialism, it's a distraction. We need both free markets and enlightened government policies. The real problem is that capitalism and socialism came out of more rigid domination times in the 1700s and 1800s. So both perpetuate the domination system's gendered values, where anything stereotypically coded feminine, such as caring, caregiving, nonviolence, what we need is deemed inferior to anything coded masculine, such as domination and violence. And this is really not a question of blaming and shaming. I cannot emphasize this enough. It's a question of changing our consciousness to understand that we're all interconnected. Now, the fourth cornerstone is normative stories. But before we get there, I want you to think of our economics, because consider that there's always money for prisons. But there somehow isn't money, for wars, right? There's always money for that. But there isn't money to care for people starting at birth and caring for our natural environment, which takes us directly to the fourth cornerstone, which, as you know, because we're changing our story about humanity, as Jude said, is normative stories. And, well, very important normative stories about human nature, right, are being challenged today. Stories like Selfish Genes, like Original Sin, that present us as selfish, as bad, and hence we have to be controlled from the top, right? That is being challenged by science. And there are words, new words that are coming into our language, such as empowering. We didn't have that, did we? Or she, and he, and domination and partnership. But these shifts have to be more conscious, and they must involve artists, musicians, writers, educators, AI, etc. So, in sum, We need, and urgently, we need a whole systems consciousness and of our interconnection that focus on these four foundational interconnected cornerstones: childhood and family, gender, which are left out of our conventional categories like right, left, religious, secular, Eastern, Western, Northern, Southern, aren't they? Economics, but different economics, and economics of caring, as I propose in my book, The Real Wealth of Nations, and yes, story language. And this is urgently needed if we are serious about creating a more equitable, peaceful, and sustainable world. I thank you all.
Thanks so much, Riane. I'd like to just comment on a few of these ideas from Jude and Riane. One of the discouraging things today is that people think that war is human nature, will always be warlike. Domination is human nature. Males should rule over females. That this is all human nature, and this is really a deadly misconception. Um, and the idea that humans are a finished product, that evolution has brought us here, but we've now reached the pinnacle of that. And really, I think we all know nothing could be further from the truth. Even though most people have in biology class learned about evolution, we tend to think of that as the evolution of life. And that took billions of years, and now here we have arrived. But really, evolution is much bigger than that. We now have a story all the way back to the Big Bang, or the Big Breath, as Jude likes to say. We know how stars form and how planets form, and we have a very good understanding of the conditions that it took for life to begin on Earth. And we have a very good record of the evolution of life on this planet. But things really get interesting about 3 million years ago or so, where one particular life form that began to walk upright and had amazing hands that could grasp and craft things. That's our ancestors. And when tool making began, stone tool making, that's really when our lineage split off from all the rest of life. And that was really the beginning of culture and the evolution of culture and consciousness. So I spent the last 20 years chasing down this story, and others have as well. But it's really a story everyone should know. And we can now trace through the archaeological record and the work of people like Jean Gebser, Merlin Donald, and Riane Eisler, very distinct developmental eras that have occurred. And we run into Riane Eisler's work in the most recent of these stages, between about 10,000 years ago and 5,000 years ago. But what she revealed that's really so stunning in The Chalice and the Blade was that between about 10,000 and 5,000 years ago, there were societies, Çatalhöyük and Jericho, and eventually the Minoan civilization on Crete, where men and women really worked in partnership, and there was a high regard for nature. There was no war, no evidence of war, no weaponry, no walled cities. Um, this is really very new knowledge that's not even completely accepted. It's somewhat of a misconception that these were matriarchal societies, and matriarchy is just another archy, just another hierarchy. Uh, Women were highly regarded, and the Mother Earth goddess was revered. But there's a lot of evidence of partnership. But this changed radically around 5,000 years ago, and probably due to invasions from the Asian steppes by nomadic horsemen who literally decimated and slaughtered these beautiful societies. And it became necessary to have walled cities and to develop defense mechanisms. So, right around 5,000 years ago was the birth of the domination culture. We see this with the first monumental architecture, the pyramids and palaces that were built by slaves. This is where the emperor archetype, the king archetype, the male, this is where patriarchy really began. This is where women became second class to men. And it's been that way ever since, all the way through history. So all of history is just a continuation of this with wars and various forms of domination. And the key characteristic of that being the hierarchical societies, where you have rankings and some people are better than others. And this has been a characteristic of virtually everything from the, all the way up to modern societies. So here we are today, and as Riane says, underlying all of these things, whether it's capitalism and socialism or modernity or any of these, finer grained nuances, they're all underlain by the domination culture, the domination mentality, the domination consciousness, which fundamentally requires a very egoic, self-centered, self-serving, often narcissistic figure. And of course, that sounds very familiar to us today as we see the rise of authoritarianism. And this to me, hopefully, is just the last dying breaths of the domination culture that can no longer serve us. And although we may be able to go on abusing our fellow humans, that may be sustainable. It's not sustainable to abuse nature in the way that we do. That's our life support system, and it's becoming very clear that we have to get back into the harmony as the indigenous wisdom teaches us. So here we are today, and I think many people who are so discouraged about the events of today, and those of us in the US, I think, feel it so acutely. If they had an evolutionary view, if they understood that we are in transition, this is not the end of the line. This is an evolutionary phenomenon. We are transitioning to something new. And I think all of us are very aligned on the vision of what that new thing must do. It must serve our fellow humans. We must learn right relationship with our fellow humans, and we must repair our relationship with nature. There's only two things really that we need to do. And so this is exactly what partnership culture is about. And so I think I'll stop there and turn it back over. And I'd like to, I heard a bit of John and Summers' presentation on the characteristics of successful partnership. And I'd like to return to that because this is very much the place that we're at. I'm convinced that as a species where we are in evolution is learning to move from this highly individuated, self-serving, egotistical way of being to how can we become a partnership species and work in ecosystems of collaboration. I think many of us want to, but it's turning out to be there are challenges with this. So I'd like to leave that as an open question. What are the challenges and what's working and what's not working? So I'll invite either Jude or Riane to jump into that.
Well, I want to say that the knowledge that Jude has shared with us, the knowledge that I have shared with you, this is knowledge that we need to apply. We can't just keep talking to one another about love and interconnection. We have to change the system. So I appeal to you to take this very seriously. And that's all I have to say, except for one thing. I really want to thank Jude because, yeah, why call it a big bang? Why not call it a big breath, for goodness sakes? I mean, it could be, and how words, categories, this is such an important thing. And I have to thank Roger because you put it all so marvelously in context. I admire how you can just tell the whole story. Thank you. And thank you, Jude.
Thank you, Riane. And I'd just like to add to that, we need to take love seriously. And when we do take love seriously, then we act from that place within us and everything changes. You know, the science is showing us indeed that we need to see the world through a new lens of wholeness and relationship. But that then comes back to us, to what do we choose from that? What if, what then? And so I would just add to invite us to choose love, because the science, as Riane, you were saying, and by the way, I use the word big breath because the science is showing us that we did not begin in chaos. Our universe began exquisitely fine-tuned and ordered and able from the very first moment to meaningfully exist and purposefully evolve to this point over nearly 14 billion years. And that big breath continues. Its evolutionary emergence continues and flows through us. So its big breath is literally flowing through our little breaths in every single moment. So when we really take seriously that we are inseparable from each other, that we are and we do belong to our beloved living and loving universe, and we choose love, then as the science of unitive love is showing us, undivided love is a foundational and evolutionary principle of the entire universe. That is why partnership relationships, that is why gender equality, that is why family and children, that is why an economics and a financial system that serve people and planet are vital. These cornerstones are vital to our future if we're going to not just survive, but to thrive and to flourish and to consciously evolve. So I thank and bless everyone. Riane, thank and bless you, and Roger and Ben and everyone, all of us. Let's, as you say, let's embody this now. Let's enact it. Let's build trust step by step, because we will move forward at the speed of trust.
That's so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've often called the definition of spirituality in partnership systems as putting love into action.
Yes, wholeheartedly agree.
And I think partnership has sort of a higher meaning, the way that we're using it, than sort of the conventional everyday meaning, where we think of business partnerships or becoming a partner in a law firm. These are very transactional things, and that is a form of partnership where the players all have very clearly in mind what they're going to get out of it. And but I think we're talking about a higher form of partnership, and I think John and Summer really nailed it when they mentioned shared purpose, a higher purpose than just what am I going to get out of it. And certainly, it's fine to benefit from partnership. We want everyone to benefit, um, but to be able to work together for something greater than just advancing yourself. And I've had some wonderful experiences in partnership um, efforts, and it's just phenomenal what happens when people really come together for that higher purpose. And so it really is that feeling, that the good of the whole sort of mentality. We're working for something greater. So I think the great project that we're all working on is to move humanity through this, to spiral up into this new earth, this new world, this new planetary consciousness, unitive consciousness. There are so many names for it. But that's the shared purpose that we all have. And I think that's what we really need to keep in mind.